All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about Gervonta Davis, Jojo Diaz, and Gary Russell Jr. and the fact that it looks like Gervonta Davis might be fighting Gary Russell Jr.'s leftovers. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. Before I get into the subject matter of the video though, please make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Also like the video and share the video. It goes a long way towards helping the channel grow, and it is much appreciated. So let's get into the meat of the video. Gervonta Tank Davis, a fighter that I happen to like a lot in the ring. I think he's one of the most talented fighters in boxing. Definitely, in my opinion, deserving top 10 pound for pound status just based off the skill sets that I've seen. Now, there are some people that I've read comments, not comments directed to me, but people like, I can't believe I almost credited Chris Mannix as a real source of somebody you should listen to about boxing. However, criticisms come to Gervonta Davis saying, who has he fought? What is his accomplishments? Right? This, that, and the other thing. Now, for me, I don't just judge whether pound for pound on the names of the people that somebody fought, because if you wait around for that, pretty much everybody's going to have an issue with everybody that somebody fought. You could do that. I could easily do the same thing that Chris Mannix did to Gervonta Davis by saying, okay, well, let's look at Canelo Alvarez. Let's see, who has Billy Joe Saunders beaten? Nobody. Who has Callum Smith beaten? Nobody. You know what I'm saying? He beat George Groves. Whoop-de-doo. Who did George Groves beat? Nobody. He beat Chris Eubanks. Who's that? Nobody. You can literally walk down most fighters' resume if you want to tear them down and do that. However, I'm not saying, though, that Gervonta Davis, there is not criticism to be spread about the way that Gervonta Tank Davis is being moved, because, you know, Floyd Mayweather Jr. said that he's only going to be having in-house fights. So when I hear that he's fighting, that he could be fighting Jojo Diaz, that to me seems like, you know, that's a fight where it's a good name. However, it's still a fight where, come on, man. Last time I checked, that's Gary Russell Jr.'s leftovers. So if you really want to be the best and have these great fights, why don't you just fight Gary? Why don't you fight Gary Russell Jr.? Now, Jojo Diaz has definitely had a very good, I don't know, has it been 2 years since? It's probably been 2 years since he fought, since Jojo Diaz fought Gary Russell Jr. And Jojo Diaz is a good fighter. He's a durable fighter. He's a good boxer. But and I say that because even though he lost for the WBC, trying to fight for the WBC title at 130 pounds, at 126 pounds, he came back and beat Tevin Farmer for the IBF, you know, for the IBF belt. And then after that, he moved up to 135 and he beat somebody that is a really tough, hard fighter to beat, fighter to beat in Javier Fortuna. So clearly, you know, he's had a good couple years, and I wouldn't say that that's a bad matchup, especially if it's a fight that takes place at 130. More than likely, that fight's going to happen in 135 pounds. Now, the reason I say it's going to happen, that Jojo Diaz is a good pick, think it's a good pick because it's showing that Gervonta Davis is not going to stay at 140 pounds. He's going to go back down to 135 pounds. Or if he does fight at 140, he's going to be fighting a blown up 135 pounder. But Gervonta Davis, I know that he won against Mario Barrios and knocked out Mario Barrios. But from what I could see, you know, Tank was just having such a big size problem in that fight that he admitted, like, yeah, man, I was really nervous in that fight because this is I didn't want to get hit, and this is some real big dude to hit me. I don't want to get hit by that. So and that's not an unreasonable thing when you're walking around at about 5'5" and you should weigh somewhere between 140 walking around. You should weigh around 150 pounds. Fighting a guy that is 4 inches taller than you and maybe outweighing you naturally by 20, 25 pounds, that could be something. So I understood why he said that. And so fighting Jojo Diaz, I think, is a good matchup. However, it is something that will continue the narrative that Gervonta Tank Davis is getting cherry picks. And like I mentioned before, Floyd Mayweather Jr. said that he was going to fight in-house fights. I don't understand why Floyd Mayweather Jr. said that from just a PR point, but I'm grateful that he said it because that's honestly more than likely what they're going to do. But I wouldn't just call it not just in-house fights, but I would call it the Mayweather method, because if you pay attention to how Floyd Mayweather Jr. was moved after he left HBO and went to Showtime, it was pretty much became a parade of the same thing. You had fighters that, if they were not Mexican, they were at the very least had a Spanish name, right? So certain people like Maidana is not Mexican, but he was Latino, spoke Spanish. So people with a Spanish last name that speak Spanish, and Floyd Mayweather would either fight around May 5th or Cinco de Mayo or around maybe the second or third week in September. Same time that, I think that might have been around Mexican Independence Day. But so it seems like he's doing the same thing with Gervonta Davis by having Gervonta Davis. Like I said this in the video before, I know what the next fight for Gervonta Davis is going to be. It's going to be against somebody that speaks Spanish and has a Spanish last name. And guess what? The next fighter for Gervonta Davis is going to be Spanish, and he's going to have a Spanish last name. And it's going to be sometime around, if they use this time, he can't right now do the Mexican holidays because he's not big enough to compete with Canelo Alvarez, who's taking those dates. But regardless, though, it's not going to be the best fight that's available for him, because the best fight that's available for him is Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr. beat Jojo Diaz, and he beat Jojo Diaz handily. And now Jojo Diaz is probably, I would suspect, one of the top 5 lightweights that there are. So if you're looking for somebody to fight that's a fight that's going to generate a whole lot of interest, to me it would seem like it would be the fight between Gary Russell Jr. and Gervonta Tank Davis. However, Jojo Diaz definitely seems like it's going to be what's going to happen, and because he fits the mold, he just got a good win, and he's somebody that Gervonta Tank Davis is most likely going to knock out. But it'll be an interesting, fun fight to watch, because Jojo Diaz is going to be there to fight. He's going to be there to hit, and he's going to be there to be knocked out. So anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think, and with that, I'm out. Peace.